Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Symbaroum stream. Not the normal kind of Symbaroum stream, though. We're not going to actually play the game tonight. Instead, for those of you who didn't catch the news, which we pretty much only posted on the Discord, which is pretty much the only place we post anything nowadays. This is going to be more of a discussion stream, whatever you'd want to call it, chatting, podcasty, whatever. Largely because we're missing John tonight, and the next episode is probably going to be pretty important. So we thought, well, the hell with it. People seem to enjoy these kind of streams as well, so we'll just do one of these. If you're interested in any extracurricular stuff about telling tales, there's links below. I don't need to go through all the stuff. Yeah, check it out. And obviously, from the fact that I said we pretty much only post stuff to Discord now, if you want to know anything more about us, Discord is probably the best place to start. So, let's just bring the players on. Though they won't be playing tonight, they'll be deadly serious as they discuss things about Symbaroum. Deadly serious, Chris. Yeah, so we can talk about whatever we want, really. It's a free country for now. So, but the idea I came up with, because I was racking my brains to think, what else can we say about Symbaroum that hasn't already been said? And I thought, well, let's not so much talk about Symbaroum as we do about the campaign. And I thought some speculative theorizing from these three people who don't know what's going to happen in the campaign might be quite entertaining. And later on, we might get another crew member who doesn't play Symbaroum but watches or listens to it all. And also, anyone in chat who wants to throw out anything, please do so and we can discuss that. Big caveat on all of this: if you are someone who's read through the Throne of Thorns and wants to go and just feels the need to massively drop spoilers into chat, please don't, because we don't want that to happen. So, if someone takes a good guess at what's going to happen and it is it, don't in chat go, "Oh my god, I can't believe you guessed that right," or something like that, because if you do, you're an asshole. So please don't do that. Preemptively calling you an asshole. And don't do that. And don't do it because I've called you an asshole preemptively either. Don't try and... This is a nightmare. Why did I suggest this?
We're off to a great start.
Why did I suggest this? Yeah, so
definitely top 5 worst intros. Good job, Matt.
I mean, that's some stiff competition. Yeah, we're going to talk about some stuff like that. We're also going to talk about some more individual taste stuff. Like, we're going to talk maybe about which characters that people want to see return. I've got some questions jotted down, but I'm happy for this to be. Yeah. Look, I talked about this because John was like, "What are you going to do?" And I told John, and John was like, "Well, if you ask what characters they want to return, everyone is going to say Baramo." And I was like, "Yeah, okay. Well, I'll just go okay," and then say, "Well, and what other actual character do you want to see return? Like, who's your number 2? I.e., the one that isn't just trolling me."
After Baramo, I would most like to see Anton return.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice, but without Mike. You've got your wish. Yeah.
I mean, ideally with Mike, but otherwise, maybe we could get a new Mike and sort of paint it to look the same, teach it the same tricks.
I don't know. Mike's unique in a very distinctively awful way, and I wouldn't want to.
It would be difficult to emulate. That's true.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, well, let's, rather than I have got some prompting questions here, but rather than just go through them, I do want to know if any one of you has any little pet theories about anything that's happening, who's responsible for anything, where everything is going, or whatever. And if none of you have anything like that, this is going to be a very short stream. It did worry me, just pulling behind the scenes a little bit, that I was like, okay, I'll get this sorted. I'll tell the guys what's doing and they'll have a think about it. And then I would say about 10 minutes before we went live, Stephen went, "What is this again?" So who knows how this is going to go.
I knew it was a chat and I knew it was vaguely kind of theories. I hadn't fully understood that there was homework.
Well, it was generally just poking your brains. It wasn't like I didn't have an agenda laid down, which I usually do, and maybe that will prove to be the undoing of this stream. But we'll find out. Who does anyone want to go first?
I'll go first because I prepared
something. I knew Chris had
what the jellied heck is going on with Queen Corinthia. Because I've got a funny feeling that there is something hiding in plain sight, specifically behind a mask, and I don't think I mean, one of my issues was not so much issues, but one of my observations about this game is that there are so many loose ends, and sometimes they fade away, and sometimes they're just nice color. But I have a funny feeling whatever's going on behind Queen Corinthia's mask is going to be kind of important at some stage, and maybe not just big reveal important, maybe like actual antagonists important.
Okay, yeah, so what are you thinking? Clown nose?
Pheromone.
Just like no, like was it you told me about the conceit of the Doctor Doom thing where it turns out that when he takes off the mask there's just a little tiny blemish and otherwise
and he thinks he's horribly scarred. Yeah. No, it'll be something predominantly Nordic, so probably a smaller face or like 5 Moomins. I don't know. Yeah, those are very Nordic things. What?
I remember the thing about Queen Corinthia wearing the mask when I first read through the rule book, and that jumped out and stayed with me. And my pet theory on that has always been that that the person behind the mask is like not the Queen Corinthia that everybody knows from Albarator. That's just become a very convenient way to like maintain a figurehead without that person having to have survived or
but at some point in her imprisonment or like some kind of switcheroo has happened at some point.
Yeah, it's like basically the Avril Lavigne theory.
Sure. Or indeed the Andrew WK theory, which was right.
I don't know that one, but okay.
The very first Andrew WK is not the current. It's not the Andrew WK who eventually became very famous. And
there's been a verified.
Andrew WK was a created corporate character who was replaced quite early on in his career, but he has been Andrew WK for 25 years now. So.
Yes, so that.
So what you say, if I understand what you're saying, Queen Corinthia is Andrew WK under the mask.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer Avril Lavigne, but
evidently you do not party hard.
As a theory,
I can't believe you're not party harder.
I think there's a chance that the Queen is undead, maybe. That's the whole Dark Lord spiel, and she was captured by the Dark Lord for a while.
Dark Lord thing is creating undead,
It would be a reason why you would wear a mask for your whole life if you have some kind of weird undead zombie face. And
well, so do we not know that she started wearing the mask after she got bit by that horrible forest thing, didn't she? If I remember no, sorry,
she's imprisoned by the Dark Lords, and when she's rescued, she wears a mask.
Too long since I've read the core book.
Yeah,
but she couldn't be undead because you can tell very easily through which side of if something is undead, and someone would have which sided her.
I don't know. I mean, Alindra fails a lot,
unless it's just a plot hole.
Unless it is just a plot hole, which is, of course, the elephant in the room is that there are more than one of those.
But, I mean, there's also the fact that, are you going to be the first person to say the Queen is undead? Like, if we go meet the Queen and then Linda's like, wait, this person's undead, are we going to be in the Queen's court? Hey, you're undead, and then we'll just get killed. I feel like that's a hard secret to let out the bag. As an individual.
You might have a point there. Let's investigate in a level-headed manner.
Or something becoming undead could have happened to the Queen, and the person you see in the mask isn't actually the Queen. So it's like a combination of Elintra and Stephen and Chris's, and all of your theories, right? Like she has a doppelganger because maybe
I do think there's no chance of this like central character who has always worn a mask after being like weirdly captured, and then slightly there's something about her rescue where like someone dies during her rescue. I don't know if I'm remembering that.
Her brother dies
Okay.
rescuing her. Duke Inadar's father.
Okay,
in the rescue.
There's no way that
I think a
that
whole
is
bunch of
gonna
other
be-
Panzers die as well, but like,
Yeah. I just can't imagine a scenario where like that person is revealed to just be a person who likes to wear a mask because they've had some like slight injury or even a major injury. I thought there's gonna be something else to it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it now. The person / being that was under the cathedral that we're kind of on the trail of since the attack is whatever the original Queen Corinthia has become.
Yeah.
Or because
I
there was
think
that painting, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think as people, I think the characters didn't grok it because of terrible roles, but I think as players we realized that the painting was very likely of a young Queen Corinthia, right?
So yeah, well, I'm not sure the player grokked it either. I got that the person was A, an artist, and B, knew what Queen Corinthia looked like.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like as players, we figured out that the painting was of a young Queen Corinthia.
Yeah.
Because it looked a lot like Esmeralda, but I think the characters actually botched their roles and didn't.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, no, because I remember because there were just not that many images of pre-mask Queen Corinthia around.
I think I literally only let Steo roll. So yeah.
But like, I don't think anybody theorized as to whether that might have been a self-portrait or just a portrait. Like, I think even if we twigged that doesn't necessarily mean that my theory is right, but I'm sticking by it anyway, so stuff it.
Definitely not.
I had kind of thought that we're on the trail of a Dark Lord who has been captured and not killed for whatever reason, and that a Dark Lord would know what Queen Corinthia looks like. Like, there's possibly some reason to keep a person like that alive. Although the stuff about Artel, maybe it's Artel who we're looking for. I don't know. But I had thought it would be like a Dark Lord. Yeah. But, was on supposedly the good side of that war, but did something horrible and then got killed, but perhaps is not dead. So Dark Lord involvement in that as well, maybe reviving him or undeading him.
So there's no support behind my whole thing of like a climactic scene where the queen gets punched, her mask gets punched, and there's like a honking noise. There's nothing.
Some of us are taking this exercise seriously, Matt.
I think you're the one not taking me seriously.
Yeah, I think you'll find Chris is nothing more serious than a clown.
Famously.
As the old saying goes.
Yeah. Cool.
I
like all that.
I don't know if this is a good time to throw it out, but like thinking about the Queen has got me thinking about Gander, the guy whose letter we found in the pub in the kind of rough end of town.
Yeah.
In terms of that, I'm choosing to believe that every word of that letter is true, that he has absolutely been shagging the Queen. And that they're planning a hideous necromantic murdering spree together.
And some people are really into clowns.
Not
letting this guy. Oh, okay, I'll let it go.
You know, they appreciate them for their seriousness.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I think in character, we pretty much all just decide that it was nonsense. And if it wasn't, we were going to treat it as nonsense anyway. But as a player, I'm like, that's definitely true.
Sure.
We've hit this stage now in a number of the big campaigns where we're at the stage in the specific storyline where we have just so many leads. And it's at this where we stand in the thick of it. It's impossible to know which one of these leads are just nice color and which one of these leads are vitally important.
Yeah.
I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, how about are there any other questions to discuss from anyone before I try and steer it in various directions? Sam, Stephen, do you have any little pet theories or enduring mysteries that you want to chat through?
It's not too much of a theory, but I kind of thought that there's a chance that that Gander and his message is about the Queen's sister, who we met, because there will be some reason for her to like deny knowing him and like deny any knowledge of who he is, and also for him to be at this place rather than like, if you're interested in the Queen, why are you at the Queen's sister's wedding rehearsal? Whereas if it's about the Queen's sister, then like
the Queen was meant to be there.
Okay,
remember, but then pulled out.
So maybe I still have some suspicion that it could be about the Queen's sister because of how she denied like knowing this person and like her reaction to it.
But the people at the bar quite specifically said that he'd been like bragging about, you know,
his
bonking the Queen.
Yeah. Okay, the Queen was supposed to be there but pulled out. Then what the hell was her elf on the shelf doing there?
I mean, he did seem to arrive around the same time as you, rather than
just
be
in
there.
the area. Perhaps a keen meteor collector, eh?
Has anyone ever seen Duchess Esmeralda and the Queen in the same room together?
Yes. Probably the court on many, many occasions. Sorry, I'll just stab that one before it.
I haven't seen them in the same room.
No, you have. No, of course you haven't. No.
We didn't even purchase the cage to put the chicken in.
To be fair, you know, at the same time, you have not seen the Queen and Beramo in the same place at the same time.
Right.
Oh, you did it to yourself.
Or the Queen and... you have seen the Queen and Anton in the same room. That would be a twist.
But I haven't seen Anton and Gander in the same place.
Mike just comes back with a mask and is like, you know, Queen was Mike this whole time.
Maybe the real Queen is nearer than you think.
I'm not being completely ridiculously distracted, by the way. There's a cat down here just
I had guessed
staring and waiting, even though he could jump up anytime he wants. There he is.
It's about the suspense.
YouTube gold.
There we go.
I think another thing, tangent to the big plot lines. Another thing I'm really interested to find out is all of the custom stuff for our characters that has been wired in. Like we've got Alindra with the cursed sword. We got my spear, the backstory of my spear, and we've got
I'll kill you.
So what else? So we got the Alindra and the sword and the sorcery.
Yeah, I can't believe.
Oh no, Arendar's last Scion thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I can't believe in retrospect how well some of the characters, like Alindra and Anton, and I think Steo to an extent, as a kind of old like, I think Steo's going to have his time as that kind of ex-military, but like I certainly didn't have any idea that Alindra as a character would end up being as close to the events in the campaign as she has. Like, you know, I wanted to do a kind of knight sort of archetype, but with a twist, and so you know, kind of had this sort of fallen Templar thing, which I thought was interesting, but like did not know that we were gonna like there was gonna be
that happened
significant
Templar, so much hot Templar action.
That was providential. That was actually very handy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good. Oh,
In fact, we need to. I think we
special-
need to take Askrai out for a bit of a. At some point, we'll get into Davokar and meet some Gadinja, and they'll be.
There's been
fun.
surprisingly little Davokar in this campaign. I feel for something for something that's so kind of.
And that's most of it. That's not my doing.
No.
That is Free League. And I would like to flag, by the way, we have got a guest, a super fan, a famous fan of the Symbaroum series. It's other Sam. How confusing.
Sam.
Although
Hello.
the first thing I would like to note is being as I am British and this is what we do. Haircut?
Yes, I have had a haircut.
Oh, there we go. So Sam, I mean, regular non-Symbaroum viewers will recognize Sam from a multitude of other things on the channel. But Sam has been watching / listening to Symbaroum pretty much from the start.
I've watched every episode except the last 6, I think. I haven't caught up that far, so I've watched everything prior to that point.
Yeah, which is good because we've been bandying around some Darkest Star theories early doors, so we can shove them away and not spoiler Sam if we can.
Other than the fact I was watching the stream.
other than the fact you were watching the stream, there's nothing we didn't. To be honest, like no answers have been provided for the Darkest Star yet in the Darkest Star, so I think it's pretty minimally spoiler free. I can see you.
It's just like in the last 2 episodes, you've killed the Queen or something that I just haven't watched yet.
Yeah, you just haven't missed out on that. Well, since Sam has arrived, let's put him on the spot immediately. Sam, have you got a stone cold reckon that you have about the campaign, or any mysteries that you want to bandy around theories on?
Yeah, I think it's all going to connect up. Like the Dark Lords and Symbaroum are going to connect up somehow. My big world theory is that, like, the humans who were part of Ancient Symbar, who ran the city of Ancient Symbar and had all sorts of strange, weird magics and stuff.
Yeah,
and they were. Am I right in thinking they were defeated by spiders and elves teaming up?
We found that out in Witchhammer. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So I think those humans had unlocked something that no one was supposed to know, etc. And basically it ends up through a chain of events becoming them turning into the Dark Lords because they've discovered all sorts of horrible stuff that messes them up. And they're actually defeated by the elves and the spiders, and they flee in a long route to Alberator, and then that's what happens to Alberator. And
they would.
So it's like full circle.
Yeah, if that had happened, they would have fled to Lyastra, which is a country next to Alberator, which is where the Dark Lords come from.
Does anyone know what happened in Lyastra?
No. Like, I think in the campaign, we've only learned the name Lyastra in the last few episodes. So, as characters, they may know more. Like, Steo would definitely have heard of Lyastra before, but it just wasn't important to have come up. So,
in general, like geographical directions, then you've got Davokar, the north end of the map. Ambria is kind of the middle. We come from Alberator, which was the south, and the Dark Lords came from the west, east.
Lyastra is, I'd say it's roughly congruous on like a parallel with Ambria. So if you go over not the Titans, the Ravens,
right? Okay.
To the east, I think you find yourself in Lyastra, but then it also has a flat land, easy route, like an invasion route, down south west to Alberator. I think I'm saying that right. There is in later books they have published a map of showing it all in place, and even where some of the land continues, while not particularly. I think they may have done a bit of arrows and here is the city-state of Blurg or whatever, to give themselves just some rambling room for later additions to the lore. But
yeah, we've noticed them doing that quite a lot with kind of the very loose maps at the beginning of the campaign, and then the incredibly detailed ones when you actually get to the areas as well, which is, I find a very nice. You can tell the story kind of evolved as they were as they were writing it out. Obviously, this is the English translation. It was originally in Swedish, but you can kind of feel you're living in a world that isn't quite finished yet as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What do others make of that? Of Sam's little theory? Then, like the Dark Lords are the Symbar dwellers.
I think it makes sense because isn't the part of the idea that like Lyasha or wherever the Dark Lords were coming from was like getting horribly corrupted, and they were like moving out of that and bringing corruption with them. And then Symbar is also like that part of Davokar is known specifically as being like a horribly corrupt place in itself, and like lots of I don't know about abominations, but general like magical corruption lives there. And so that kind of tracks that these are people who have unlocked the similar kind of magical knowledge that has corrupted to where they originally came from, and they've just transported it, and eventually it's come to Alberator.
No, it's perfectly cromulent.
Well, going all the way back to the first arc when we met Zenatha, the Spider Queen, and she gave us all our little vignettes. Obviously, Davokar was the concept of Davokar was a punishment for hubris. It wasn't a forest until someone fudged about with corruption. Likewise, Alberator wasn't a wasteland until someone fudged about with corruption. So there's there seems to be a mirror, a kind of intellectual mirror going on, or narrative mirror going on there, perhaps.
Yeah.
Davokar the Forest, I always got the sense was like more recent than Symbar. Like the forest grew after the old kind of empire fell into ruin. That'd be
so cool if you went to Alberator and it was like sapling trees. Sorry, that would be a complete switch around for expectation, wouldn't it?
Beginning to grow. I think there's like in the setting,
give the game away, but it would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Like there's one of the things that I really like about the setting is the way that it plays with the boundaries between like what's a refugee, what's a settler, what's an invader.
Yeah.
Can a people be kind of all three? And
spoiler,
so,
yes. Yeah.
That's what Ambria is, right? Like it's a refugee migration which became an invasion.
Yeah, it is both they are both refugees and colonists.
Yeah. And they're doing that because Alberator was invaded. And there's also that kind of undertone of like kind of all of the humans feel like they can probably, if they tried hard enough and had the materials to research, would be able to trace their lineage back to like what we would now call barbarian tribes, right? I feel like Alberator was kind of via whatever route definitely came from the area that's now kind of Davokar once upon a time.
Maybe.
His hunches.
It's all hunches.
Because the place that Indaros used to be, like since Symbar, Indaros was like a big, powerful
Lindaros,
like,
a city state.
Like a human city state.
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel like that is also plausible that from a big, powerful place like that, people moved to Alberator and then eventually ended up coming back.
That seemed to have been a bit different culturally from the barbarian tribes, because barbarians only occupied Lindaros after it fell to disease, and then they occupied Old Kadazar, which is the where Nobleman Dastan is now. So there's all sorts of complexity going on there, and I really like it for that complexity because it feels very historical. Because the movement of people and like how states and cities and all sorts of things develop is much more messy in real life than it's often portrayed in fantasy. And I like how messy the history of this whole region is, and everything's intertwined and interrelated, because it feels a lot more realistic than something a bit more straightforward. And it's weirdly something I'd compare to. It's really weird because it's obviously the fantasy yardstick, Tolkien's work, but I feel like a lot of what people read Lord of the Rings as, especially if they only watch the films, but also to a certain degree if they've read the books, but maybe not the appendices and the additional stuff, is they see that as quite a straightforward world, whereas in reality, Tolkien actually does fill it with the exact kind of messiness that this is kind of like a parallel of, in like how people move and kingdoms rise and fall and like all sorts of different confusing things. And it leads to lots of like interesting little trivia nuggets that people like me are interested in. Like literally the other day, I found out something new that I hadn't known, which is that Gondor built Helm's Deep and then gave it to the Rohirrim, which like that exact kind of like weird, wonky messiness is really,
It's like,
really cool. It feels lived in.
yeah, exactly. It's like blurred boundaries, which is like real life.
Mhm.
That's what's enjoyable about Symbaroum. Like just talking
Yeah.
about the barbarians and the humans who came before. It's not like they're a different species. They're all human,
No.
but there's a
Yeah.
clear cultural distinction between them. So it's like
Mhm.
the humans died out or left or were wiped out, and then some more humans who are different
Yeah.
somehow then moved in. And it's like, why are the barbarians separate from the old Symbaric people? Is quite an interesting thing to me.
I mean,
and they
yeah.
haven't apparently had the same. Some of them have been corrupted, but they haven't apparently had the same power hungry urges that the ancient Symbaroum people had, and to a certain extent it seems like the Ambrians maybe do.
Yeah, or is that in turn an oversimplification? Isn't it just that
Yeah,
barbarian tribes who have had that urge maybe aren't there anymore, or on
yeah,
like barbarians, you know, the witches have a real thing about stamping on corruption. And is that why? Like, because of things in the past, or I also really like the they don't really make it explicit in the books, but I've tried to make it, I think, more explicit by my whole thing of it, of like the Ambrians traveling north to these like barbarian woodland tribes, and like maybe with a certain sense of superiority and a kind of more colonist attitude towards it, and then going to somewhere like Archbridge and being like, this is a big city with stone building, you know what I mean, like that kind of thing of it. And I'm consciously trying to echo elements that you get in other places of like things in our history. And I don't want to go too into it, or we'll get into the weeds about this kind of thing. But like these sort of prevailing attitudes that a lot of cultures within our world, their cultures were inherently kind of more primitive or backward. What does that mean? Like, by what definition? How do we define that? But also, like, we're looking at an awful lot of cultures that have gone through an apocalypse. Like, and then we're going, oh, well, they weren't, you know, they're not as technologically advanced, or they're not like it, they're more like just a tribe than a culture or a civilization. And of course, we're looking at these people who've gone through centuries of, you know, it's sometimes ecological, sometimes economic, sometimes intentional genocide. And like we're looking at it, you know, a classic one is obviously like the Columbian Exchange in the New World, where an entire continent was ravaged by disease and the depredations of various people from the other side of the world. And like now we look at it at like, when you look at like things like accounts of indigenous peoples in North America and Central America, like from, you know, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and we view them as tribes, and we don't talk about the massive cities that were spread out across Mesoamerica and North America, that weren't there by the time most people arrived, and all that was left was a nomadic, quote unquote, tribal culture. Yeah. And it's like I want to represent that sort of idea of like, oh, you know, they're just savages, and then this doesn't match with my attitudes. I think that's a good thing to echo.
I have to assume that it was a deliberate choice on the part of Free League that all of those different tribes are known in the book and to Ambrians collectively as barbarians.
Yeah.
Like that. There's that kind of cultural snobbery kind of built in, which I think
unhelpful.
It completely sort of ignores the reality of the kind of difference between those tribes. It completely ignores the history, and like in being such a kind of an uncomfortable like word and a brush to kind of tar all of those different peoples with, I think it says a lot about the attitudes of Ambrians. So I very much hope that was deliberate on the part of Free League, because if that was just some stuff snuck in,
it absolutely was, and we know it was because they did. A couple of the writers of Symbaroum did a stream back when their Twitch was active, and a couple of us were in the chat and submitted questions, and I believe Chris submitted a question about kind of like subtext of colonialism and stuff like that, and they were very pleased that someone had noticed, because I think it's something that goes under the radar a lot of the time unless it's you hang a lantern on it, right? And I think like yeah, and that but also it gives the world texture and a degree of being lived in, because if you just have these barbarian tribes living in huts in the woods, and then you have it feels like a cliche and not like something interesting, not like a proper lived-in world with many shades of grey and a whole continuum of existence. So it's
the interest comes from that, the contrast between like the language used to describe them versus what they are when you go to meet them.
Especially because if you go to like some of these the barbarian clans and the cultures, and you like basically throw them in the pot with certain other cultures nearby, they would be horrified and offended because they're not, there's as we've already seen, there's like this growing split between North and South Davakar, kind of the clans of those areas. And there's also, we haven't really gone like the Plains clans off to the west, like the Sarkhan, that we haven't really gone into. And yeah, I love that stuff around the fringes, stuff around the edges, and I like the idea of mapping that in at some point. But yeah,
I think it's interesting
doing a bit more now with like the next release, which is Grella, which is over to the west and is away from stuff that happens in the campaign. Sorry, Sam.
But just it's interesting that there are some clans who are like, even amongst the almost like, it doesn't matter geographically, but there are some clans that are like seem very radical and like warlike or kind of extreme in certain ways, and then mixed in with a bunch of clans that seem quite like compatible with sort of Ambrian society, and that like the Sarkhan are meant to be, from the like brief description I've read, are meant to be just like kind of crazy, like very warlike, very aggressive. And we've encountered the Carrots that are also like a bit like that, like a bit on the edge, and then the far northern clans are like that. But then there's like, those are clans that are sort of separated geographically with no like particular rhyme or reason. And then amongst those are a bunch of clans that are sort of more neutral and like more accepting of foreigners and more kind of peaceful. And just there doesn't seem to be any particular like clan culture really that goes between all of these different clans, but they're still all lumped in as like, those are the barbarians. And like,
because inevitably, and again historically, when you use a term like barbarian, all it really means is not us. Like, that's certainly what the Greeks meant by it, and therefore what the Romans meant by it. And you can go to other cultures and see similar terms. Like obviously the one everyone knows from, I guess the second runner one everyone knows is Gaijin, something like that, and it just means not us. Often that's like a very logical extension of, very frequently in history, a people's word for themselves is the people. Like, i.e. the real humans.
Yeah. And it does come across
as a lesson we learn from history, but it never really seems to be.
It does come across as something that's like profoundly unhelpful for like people in Ambria to understand what the differences between themselves and these different clans are, but extremely helpful for like the Queen and the leadership of Ambria to enable things like this, going to Carvosti and like sieging the sieging Carvosti, because I think if they weren't all grouped together in that way, and we understood that like, oh, the Yadessa are like actually pretty normal, and the Odavs are pretty normal, like not normal, but just like very compatible with Ambrians, and like, you know, not too far from being on the same page culturally in a lot of ways, and like quite accepting of Ambrians, that it's almost like a term that helps to lump in the acceptable to Ambrian clans with the ones that aren't, in a way that enables Ambria to see them all as enemies and see them all as like places to be conquered. And
absolutely, it's almost like the
right.
rulership of elites is constantly shored up by identity driven by the otherness of others. Fortunately, we're past that now in 2025, and
please stop.
There are no relevant current examples.
Seconded.
I'll tell you what I want to know about. I want to know about
go on.
spiders, to entirely derail the conversation. What
Spiders,
we're going.
sure.
Because like these spiders, what is up with them? Spiders are usually just monsters that are in the forest. And then you got Zanatha, a spider goddess, who kind of wasn't evil, kind of definitely was, but also didn't obviously just devour you or hunt you down for what you've done.
Had a motivation and an agenda, but
and you had a
was willing to work
right?
with you to further that and yours.
And that was kind of a thing. And now we found out about the spiders allied with the elves. And it's like, we know the elves aren't good guys as such, but they're not obviously just the big bad pure evil like you might expect the thing that allies with spiders, right? They're enigmatic and strange and not to be trusted intrinsically, but they ally with the spiders. So what is, they're obviously sentient in some way, and they clearly have some sort of agenda. And at the moment, it almost looks like they're trying to prevent corruption getting out of hand, because kind of the two incidences when we've seen the spiders doing something actively was them trying to stop things going into the hands of people who didn't understand them, or evil beings. Yeah, exactly. So are they kind of the good guys in this setting? That's weird.
Zanatha was trying to prevent the dark water falling into the hands of the other seemingly worse things. The creeping darkness was almost certainly worse. And then of course Zanatha's daughter, right? Underneath the in the witches' tunnels underneath Carvosti for her own reasoning.
And even Zanatha we understand to be like the daughter of a real like god. And I think Sam, me as a player, thought that like that might be a sort of kind of mystical thing, but we met a god that had his head chopped off. So maybe somewhere there's an actual like spider king god thing that is running spiders somewhere, or like doing something with spiders somewhere.
You realize that's like counter my point. Those evil guys who worship spiders, they're bad guys. So not all good.
Who throw spiders at people.
Real bad guys.
It's just rude.
You've also met a toad god who had absorbed some of his priests by the look of it.
I noticed something. Something's just clicked with me that I really like about the setting in Symbaroum, and that is it's something that's also one of the reasons why I absolutely love Dune, and that is the relative lack of metaphysics. Like, we're not dealing with the concept of an umbra. We're not really dealing with the magic system. The magic system is made out of components that are intrinsically mysterious, like what actually is corruption, what are these forces. So I kind of like that while the world itself is phenomenally realistic, and we're just talking about Zanatha and spiders and elves, there is no real spectrum of good or evil. There are just, like in the real world, interests and politics. I just find that very refreshing. Is that Tolkienian? I feel that's very Tolkienian. Avoid the metaphysics, focus on the social physics.
Yeah, I feel like in a way the opposite with Tolkien. In a way, I do feel like Tolkien definitely has a metaphysics, but they're mostly hidden behind a veil of nerdery that he didn't let out to the main books. as much. But I do also feel that, like, one thing a lot of people have pointed out in Tolkien, that unlike most fantasy, is it, like, for example, humans and hobbits don't seem to have religion, which is quite interesting. The elves sort of do, but it's more like, I mean, for them, it's almost like a kind of ancestor worship. In that they, even the like great spirits, they kind of venerate because they're kind of from them. So it's like a kind of interesting side of it. I do like that Symbaroum does not have a unified metaphysics in it, that it goes, this god is real, this, like, Prios is real, or any number of things. Like, all these different belief systems, they all seem to work. Like, as in, they all grant the user mystical powers. So, yeah, is it everything? Is it nothing? Is something else going on? I would say, and this isn't a spoiler, that there, just something I'd like to drop on your head. There have been hints of it so far. There is a uniting metaphysics in Symbaroum. It's not good and evil. It's more grey than that, and it is a continuum of three. It's a triangle. There are
I
three
recall you sent
forces.
across this document before session 0 to familiarize yourself, and I remember that being mentioned, but never seeing it during actual play. So thank you for reminding me about that.
There's definitely kind of three warring influences at work in the world. And as we go through the campaign, that will become more prominent. But I don't think it's ever hugely on the page, if you see what I mean. But I think you'll get more of a sense of it as we go through. But also, there have been snippets of, like, prophecy and, like, symbaric texts that where elements of it have literally been mentioned, but without knowing what they mean. They will, of course, have somewhat passed you by. But definitely wouldn't consider it a spoiler. But no, there is something bubbling under the hood, but it's definitely not overt. In the same way that a lot of other fantasy, there are prophecies and there's chosen ones and there's the gods at work directly in the. There's nothing like that.
We've definitely stumbled across a couple of tablets in our time, which I think we probably haven't taken as much time as the characters perhaps should have done to, like, really digest and think about what they mean.
Yeah,
I think one of the cool touches I really like, and it kind of it shows the artistry at work here, because they keep overlaying these, they keep juxtaposing contradictory meaning on stuff, or contradictory values on stuff, and it is those bronze tablets. Because those bronze tablets that we found simultaneously have the concept of this vaguely alluding to the concept of the Queen of Alberator coming and taking ownership of Symbaroum again. But it's also made very clear when you read about them. I think they're mentioned in the core book and some of the flavor text earlier on, that they are printed, it seems, with the quality of, like, a penny dreadful. They seem to be, like, almost like pulp. And it's just that overlaying of those two contradictory things. Like, is this meaningful or is it meaningless? And they keep doing this, and they just don't miss with it. It's such a good little kind of, again, belies the complexity of the world when you can put these things on top of each other and just throw the players into the mists.
Yeah, and I think what it does do, and what something I'm really trying to bring across, is, like, even though you're becoming significant players in this world, you're still kind of very much buffeted about by the winds of fate, and everyone is beholden to, like, these great, like, great events that pull people along in their wake. Yeah. Is there any other? No, go on, Sam.
I was just going to say that I think that is a way that it keeps you kind of, there's some sort of buffer zone between, like, the player characters and the metaphysics of, like, the really truly, like, world powers, in that you're so, like, there's a layer, there's probably, like, multiple layers between where you as the players are and the like global like godly religious forces, because it's like you're still, as players, we're still dealing with like kind of human politics, and then there's like powers above that are like these demigods and gods and like weird beings that we don't like fully understand. And then presumably above that there's these like giant, you know, kind of global powers, or like really kind of mythological figures that, but we're so like we're so far away from them. Like there's beings in between us that are like a god that's had his head chopped off, or like a spider demigod that to us are like, wow, this is like the ultimate power in the, you know, it's so far beyond us.
And they're like the
see them.
pawns.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
no.
from our perspective, it feels like it's just a world populated by these like strange mythical beings that are like really far beyond us. So we never even get to like think about, or, you know, kind of have any connection with these, like the real kind of giant metaphysical sort of real leaders of the world.
Which is, and that kind of thing is really what allows Symbaroum, when it does go into horror, to be more cosmic horror, which is something I really appreciate. Regular viewers might not know this, but I quite like cosmic horror.
That's how you like your horror. It's cosmic.
Yeah.
Steven. I think Symbaroum, I don't know if it does, but like I feel like it has some of those. There's an interesting set of questions that you can ask in the context of, I guess fantasy world building, but like perhaps there are real world analogs as well. When you're dealing with pantheons, which we very much are, right? Like Prios is definitely not the one true god, because we've met other gods, right, or at least demigods, and have the sense that there is at least one layer above that. But like we went to, this is back in Davakar, we went to that temple of Prios that had images of sun gods, certainly, but like not necessarily Prios. And I think we've seen little glimpses of this like throughout the thing of like, are there multiple sun gods? Is there one sun god that kind of wears multiple faces for different people at different times? Is the ultimate power there actually just kind of like something more kind of conceptual that just people apply different kind of forms to help them sort of understand it? You know, and how much kind of overlap is there? Like things can get very kind of muddy when you dig into those things.
Yeah. And I like how every so often you're sort of reminded that while like humans are bringing these mystic powers to bear, that there's every so often there's just a sign that it is more than just, or it seems to be more than just, that mystics have learned how to do this, how to kind of twist reality to their will. When something happens that's so beyond like what I'm thinking specifically of the end of what's bred in the bone, of the saber reducing someone to like essentially a nuclear shadow.
That's presumably not something that she could do at will, right? Like that was very much some higher power.
It seemed to be her opening herself to Prios's power in some sense, and it's really interesting having these that I really, people will know I really love stories that seem very grounded until they don't. And if you don't know that, go watch Yellow King, because that's basically the premise of that entire series. Yeah, definitely. Has anyone else got any? Go.
Let's not forget the death of the guy in Castor, the old guy as well. That was another perfect example of that, when it was nothing, and suddenly, and that was kind of the first time you saw it.
And he suddenly just incinerates an entire cult in his final magics.
There was one bit of the story. Sorry, there's one bit of the story I always wanted to talk to the players about, because it was so fun to me to watch you all just like have different perspectives on it, and I love how it turned out. The bit with the tablets at the end of when you're going to the different islands and you get the tablets broken in the water. I can't remember what the names of anything is, but And then I just love the dichotomy of I think we'll just take a rubbing quietly. It was so fun because I think up until that point you've kind of been disagreeing, but you hadn't had to make any choices, and that was the big moment when you had to make a choice. And like Ascarai and to a certain extent Lindrum were just like, we're not just gonna not take a rubbing. Come all
Yeah.
this way, we're not gonna go away with nothing. And then like Steo just like no. And then I
Yeah.
still don't. I never really got exactly how much Steo really knew that was happening at that point. Was it just I'm going to look away and knowing it's happening, or was it you actually didn't realize? Because that I don't know.
He
I think Steo
definitely
probably
he
knows by
definitely
now.
knows. He definitely
Yeah, he
knows.
knows by now. But did you choose not to stop it in the moment, like Chris? Or
Yeah, I don't think because like it's one of the things I think I'm starting to feel maybe it's a little bit clunky is that I think maybe this system works better where all the members of the party are on the same kind of macro geopolitical side. So if everyone is, I mean, I
I
appreciate the
disagree.
conflict because, like Stephen, I'm also and Matt, I'm also ex storyteller system Vampire the Masquerade. I'm used to most of the drama in the system coming from interpersonal stuff, and that's really great. I just feel like it's like Steve was having to live in this place of compromise, which is very difficult when I'm trying to play such a matter of fact character. So it's quite
I think like
yeah.
it ultimately it was a moment of truth for the party, and I felt like it ultimately ran up against Steo has his principles, some of which he's developed just over the course of the campaign through his experiences. All the characters do to a certain degree, but Steo and Arendar more so. Elindra's in a very loose framework with this largely, apart from like directly personal things, I think, personal feelings. And Ascarai is just, I feel like Ascarai has just like almost detached himself from any of it, in that he's just trying to survive essentially the best he can.
have fun, as we chatted about recently.
Yeah, and I feel like that moment I felt was a crunch point of like Steo has a choice to make here, and Arendar have a choice to make here. Their friends don't want to go in the same direction. He feels like he has a split duty here to his friends and to his newfound allies in the Iron Pact. And ultimately, well, most importantly, I've just remembered that I haven't turned the background on. But the ultimately, I felt that was it may be overly dramatic to call it a choice between Steo here has a choice between letting his friends do this or killing his friends or dying himself trying to kill his friends. Because he's argued for it and they have not capitulated to his argument. So I felt like if anything, it was almost a moment that solidified the group as a group that will carry on despite having differences, opinions of these things, and just basically meander forward with the best intent.
Yeah,
I think I always attempted like it's a cop out, and it's a cop out I've used before when I've been playing characters, but to build a character around the fundamental concept of just being pragmatic. It's in the situations like that where you can go, okay, I fudged this. But I also think like Steo, I think an episode or two before Steo in one of my diatribes, one of my frequent diatribes, Steo made the point that like Steele's goal is to close the door. He's not too fussed which side of the door the party are on when it gets closed. Like so he can fudge the lines and we can all end up on that path to Symbar as long as he's making sure it's safe so that other people it's protected enough to prevent other people from getting into trouble.
Yeah, I think between the characters there's quite often it can take a while to find it, and it's quite often a very small patch of common ground, but it's like just enough to hang on to. I feel like more than in any other campaigns that I've played, in fact, that there's this really interesting kind of push-pull dynamic between the characters, right? In that they do have different outlooks, they've got different sets of values, different motivations, and so they do quite often pull in different directions. But there is also a bond that is kind of formed from some of those shared experiences that feels very kind of real and strong, and feels like I imagine kind of military personnel that have served together and things like that have, you know, that have had those very dangerous experiences together where they've had to rely on each other a lot, and that trust becomes not like completely unquestioned, I suppose, but very, very strong and like able to override.
Yeah, it goes beyond
differences of
trust
opinion.
into loyalty.
Yeah,
which I do think is a different thing. Yeah, and I agree. And it's an interesting thing because not only does it form the party more together, but it also sets up further down the line of like, I think Steel will be fine if you end up in Symbar and the others loot a load of stuff and then go, yeah, that's okay. Not kick the door shut behind us now. Like, but it goes to something else. Like, there's a further confrontation waiting down the line, right? If that isn't the case. And that could be interesting. Before we what I want to do is go to some of the little questions I had written down and just do more of a round the table thing of some of these, because I think some of them are interesting. I'm really glad Sam is with us because I think some of these are going to be interesting to hear from a viewer perspective. The first one, it's a question I've asked before, but I think we've moved quite a bit since then. And also, I'm hoping that this time people aren't as relentlessly interested in trolling me about it. But I know that's not going to happen. And for that reason, we're going to start with Chris to get it out of the way. But Chris, out of all the characters, all the actual characters with character traits you've met through the course of the campaign, which one or ones would you love to see return or play a major part or whatever? And yeah, I know you're going to say Beramo, but
I'm going to try not to say Beramo, but it's just he's a bit of I got a bit of a sociopathic trait, and I can't really think of anyone I'd really want to draw in, because on one hand I'd like to know more about the elves, but on the other hand I'm aware that there's a very specific dramatic dialogue that has to happen with the elves, and they are specifically cryptic, so like getting more elf side characters is not going to help us learn more about their part that they're playing. It's in fact probably just going to create more questions. So yeah, no, I don't really know. I don't know if it's anyone I miss. I mean, really I'd like to meet Degesto again so I can kill him, and that will solve one of the robbing problems.
Nice. Stephen, how about you?
I was going to say Degesto because actually, like, the party in general and Lindra in particular's opinion on him evolved quite a lot.
Considering at the beginning you were like, "Oh, we've only just met this guy, but shall we kill him just for no particular reason?"
At the beginning, there were like 30 episodes of that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just took a very long time to sort of like find his way into her trust, and then I think eventually did. Apart from that, I don't know really. The Saber is always fun to have around.
Yeah,
we've had quite a lot of Desaber, like, albeit kind of on the sidelines.
Yeah, I think she was a popular answer when I first asked this question, but since then she's essentially had her own little focus.
She's kind of done her thing.
Yeah. How about you, Sam? And by Sam, I mean Sam.
I don't know about like allied characters, but there's a couple of characters I'd like to encounter again because I think it would be interesting. One is the elf who is like second in command of the elves that we met, who is much less friendly to us than the main elf that we met, whose name I can't remember, but I should remember.
I am literally going to look up her name because I also cannot remember.
Well, he's Malachi, but I can't remember the name of the other elf.
His name is
Malachi's
Malachi.
Tiana. What happened to Tiana?
Tiana is the elf you met in the Hall of 1,000 Tears. I'm going to look up the name of that the spikier elf.
Yeah, I feel like that elf is like the wedge issue of our party. Yeah,
Adriania. Yeah.
Because like I don't know, she's sort of somewhere. Like our party, I think the big split over our party is how much do we trust the elves? With Steo and Arendar being like, we are on the elf side, and Askrai being like, no, we don't trust the elves at all. And Elindra is more on the like, we don't really trust the elves side of this. And there's this elf that is like kind of an embodiment of that. Whereas like Malachi is always quite friendly towards us overall as a group, and like, you know, as friendly as an elf gets, and the other elves we've met. But this is an elf who's like not very friendly towards us, and even to the members of our party who are sort of on the elves' side, like more or less. And I just think they're an interesting character for our party in particular to encounter, and like how we would deal with an elf like that. I think the other person is the like. I don't know exactly who they were, but they were like, they managed the like sewage of Thistlehold or something.
Okay.
We met at like a party at the end of one of those Thistlehold, and they seemed to be like jolly. They really knew what was going on, and like seemed to be a bit like more connected than we would have thought, and a bigger character than I would have thought. And then we've never heard from them again, but I'm certain that they're going to pop up again in the future and be like a bad guy or a good guy or an important person.
Thistlehold sewage guy for sure.
It's interesting hearing these different things, because obviously in my head, one of two things happens when you say that. I either I'm going or I'm going, well, you're going to be disappointed. Which is it?
I feel like the sewage guy is coming back, I believe.
Okay.
Whoever that was.
We've been talking a lot about
dude is coming back.
We've been talking a lot about how much the system owes or borrows or homages Tolkien, but I think sewage guy is very much Pratchett.
Sewage guy is Pratchett. We could definitely all agree on that.
He was quite pompous, as I recall, though.
He was, and
he wasn't like a sort of working class kind of go down the sewers.
No. I think he was quite jolly with it. He was, he was a bit up himself, but quite friendly and cheery. I think that's how I played.
He was in charge of like important infrastructure that just happened to be the shit pipes.
Yeah,
but like
it's very important infrastructure. So there we go. Sam. From a viewer's perspective, what are your fan favorite characters, and which ones do you want to come back?
I've got a little list, so I'll go for the bad guy first. Bad guy. I mean, Zanatha, I'm desperate to see come back because apparently the spider stuff fascinates me, and that's just such an interesting connection to the characters. So I'm sure the story will at least touch on that at some point, but I really want Zanatha to actually come back into it. Because that's just so fascinating, and if it's not an entirely antagonistic relationship, that will be really fun. As for kind of more good guy characters or people you interact with more regularly, I really enjoyed, because we haven't come back to it in a long time, and it might come back. What they're called? My brain's just gone blank. The people who use magic, like the fiery magic people, the
pyromancers.
Yeah. Like
they're just they're like a part of the Order Magica, but yeah.
Thank you, Order Magica. That was the word I was trying to. Yeah, the Order Magica like master who was working with Elindra. That was an interesting conversation. Kind of connection.
Who wanted to? Yeah.
They want help you understand the witch site and stuff.
Furia. Yeah.
Furia. She's been trying to look up Furia since we got to.
Yeah,
Indoros, right, but like not successfully so far because
they were
events have occurred.
Exactly, they were quite a cool character anyway, and also that connection is just fascinating. I'm really looking forward to seeing that explored.
Yeah,
more.
Exploring that and seeing it.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. As for like characters you're more regularly involved in. I think the Gesto's sidekick, the one he hired later on, who
Malamai.
survived, Malamai. I thought he was quite fun. It was quite nice to
like
have like
playing
a
him.
boisterous, enjoyable.
Yeah, I like
I'd
playing
like to see
him.
him come back. Mhm.
He's a bit of a. You can use him quite well as a like a what's it called? Like an insert for
Like a foil?
Yeah, but not. What's it called? It's like a trope in fiction, like where you insert someone who is like maybe naive enough or like unlearned enough that they can act as the viewers or readers
Oh yeah,
surrogate.
Oh, it's a lot of name, doesn't it? Mm-hmm.
I can't believe I can't remember it, but that
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah, and it would be fun to have him come back with like an amount of time passed and things have happened for him as well. So it's like he's changed a bit as well as you've had stuff. That would be kind of cool. So
Yeah.
and he'd maybe join the party. And that's an easy one, Matt. So you make that happen, right?
Yeah. I made Malamai up, so that's very easy.
Yeah. What was my last one? Oh yeah,
I was
my last
thinking
one
of
is
buying him off the Gesto and taking him as a companion, actually.
Buying him?
Yeah.
He's a
He's
hireling.
just dots on a page, Matt. They're not real.
well, you go
Sorry,
go ahead.
Sam.
Either that or you get yourself killed soon and you can play him, Chris.
Yeah. Sorry, Sam. Who was your next one?
The last one, apparently names have gone from my brain now, but the apprentice psychic to Elindra. I think she's really fun.
Revelia.
She's got Revelia, thank you. She's got such an interesting backstory and so dark as well where it comes from. And it's like she's always really quiet, which I think makes sense for her character. But I think it'd be quite nice to play into her and play her a little bit. I guess even Steven might do that at times or whatever. But
yeah,
it is something that I felt kind of bad about not finding more opportunities to kind of lead into that and develop her as a character, because she's kind of just a bit of a shadow at the moment. But like there's a lot there, right?
Yeah. I think like I would have given her more focus if it wasn't for the fact that there's often an entire group of people around the characters that I have to like speak for and pay attention to, especially since Mike stepped away. So like it's difficult for me to always remember Revelia. But I mean that and the fact that I've handed her over to Stephen because she's like it's not quite troop play, but like it's the thing, because you have bought her, i.e. not in the game but with points,
XP,
right? Yeah, as like a companion. So yeah.
Oh, it's fine
Cool.
when they say it. Oh.
So my next question, out of all the places we've heard of in Symbaroum, or all the places we've visited, maybe you want to go back there. Where is a place you want to go as part of the campaign? And we're going to start with the one of you who looks least like they're thinking, which I assume means that they already have a place in mind, and that's Stephen.
Shit.
It was just because the others were doing a kind of like, and you were there like,
I was doing that on the inside. So in a very general sense, I would like to see more of the inside of Dabakar.
Yeah, sure.
I presume that eventually our path is going to take us to Symbar, but I feel like there's a lot more other bits of
wouldn't it be
Dabakar.
Amazing if they just didn't?
I mean, yeah, that's possible too.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like
book's title lies.
I feel like the game sells itself as being more about delving into the forest than the campaign has done.
Campaign reflects. Yeah, no, I agree to a certain degree.
In Ambria, finding out what the hell's going on at Temple Wall might be fun. That might be an interesting place to go, just because it's kind of so central to like some pretty big events and like shifts of power. Yeah,
and Alindra related ones as well. So,
I mean, call me selfish, but yeah.
No. I think I should have said before I asked for answers on this question. Obviously, like, and it's fine to list the ones that are book titles, but obviously, to a certain degree, if you pay attention to the titles of the books in the Throne of Thorns campaign, you roughly know where you are going to go, or at least some places you are going to go because they're in the titles of the books. With that in mind, Chris, what are your places to go or revisit?
Well, not Alberator is the number one thing.
Oh well, you're fine then. There's definitely no
Yeah.
volume of the series named after it, so it's all fine.
I just feel like I've got a lot of work to do to do Steel properly, going back to Alberator, and I'm not sure I'm ready to have to do all the preparation and research to handle it properly. So I'm gonna do some reading and figure that out.
Fair enough. And places you do want to go or revisit, if there's any of those.
Yeah.
Anything?
I don't know. I mean, the shores of Lake Volgoma has become a meme and a folk song that I'm floating around in my head. But definitely, I mean, it's not a place that's an adventure. It's a place that is intrinsically the opposite of adventure. It's now become Steele's Shire, and definitely want to have at least one beach episode there, I think.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be no scouring of Lake Volgoma to match the. Continue.
I'm sure there will be with you in charge, honestly. You just because you seek out joy and annihilate it.
I'm just as soon as we go to Volgoma, we know. As soon as we go back to Volgoma, I think we're gonna, assuming that we ever get there, like I think we're gonna realize like just how many assumptions Ambrians make about how welcome they'll be in places.
I have flagged this up, and I think it's a wonderful microcosm that Chris is performing there with Steo of like, oh, we went to that place and it was nice and they were friendly. I'm sure they won't mind if we go back and make a house and maybe buy some of the land and maybe drag
close the commons. Got to get those commons enclosed.
Drag terror to their door. Yeah,
it's a horribly flawed plan, and that's I think what makes it beautiful.
And it is in keeping with the party, to be honest. Sam, from a viewer's point of view, is there anywhere that's been mentioned that you'd love to see, or places they've been that you'd like for them to go again?
I think, yeah, definitely Alberator is top of my list. I kind of follow along with the books. I'm like, Indaros I've been looking forward to, and Alberator is just going to be fascinating because there's so many questions about what actually happened and what is happening, and I think it's going to tie. It's obviously going to tie into the main plot line somehow, so it's going to answer a lot of that. And the continuing plot as well. I also think for me, and it's why like Temple Wall comes in as well, like just because it's the characters, places significant to the characters are fun. So like Elindra originally from Temple Wall, Steo, Alberator, obviously. So I'd also be quite keen to see like Northern Davokar at some point for Ascarise.
Yeah, the Godinja lands. Yeah.
Aye, that would be good. Because we've got Indaros with Aaron as well now. So that's kind of like the origins for the characters and places.
Yeah.
It's fun to do, basically.
And we often talk about Steo, but let's not forget that Anton also only left Alberator like, God, what is it? However long our campaign is now, like 3 years ago? That's 4 years ago, something like that. So, yeah, absolutely. Okay, other Sam. It's been a while since you've had to be called other Sam. What about you?
I feel like my answers are pretty much the same as other Sam, aka Sam. In that I'm genuinely most excited for Alberator because I feel like it's a place that will have answers about the things we know, like the things that we know that we don't know. I think Symbar is the place that's going to have answers about the things that we don't know. And Alberator is going to be the one that has answers about like what's up with the Queen, what's up with like Ambria, what's up with Prios, like what's up with the Dark Lords. Like these are all the questions that I have about our campaign. I feel like Symbar is going to reveal answers to things that I don't even know, I'm not aware of yet, or like questions I don't even know that I have about the campaign. That Alberator is going to have some answers to things that I know that I want to know.
Yeah. What's the deal with this haunted waste?
Yeah, exactly.
That old Seinfeld routine.
But equally, I am interested to know if we'll ever end up in the like northern, like so-called barbarian clan lands, and how that will play out with Askrai's background.
Yeah. Awesome. I have another couple of questions. I don't know if we'll do both of them, but I'll definitely do at least one because I'm really interested in this. We've talked already about how Symbaroum isn't straightforward. It's not really black and white. But out of all the factions or people, but I guess I'm thinking mainly factions throughout this, and there's a lot that have been introduced now, especially over the course of the last arc or two, with like the different kind of like meta plots, like things happening in the world. If each of you had to pick one group of people, one faction, or even, I guess, one person, if you really want to be the quote, end quote, big bad of the campaign, who are you choosing it to be? And I'll vamp for a little bit so you can have a thought. Although Chris is already nodding in a very firm fashion, so I don't. Okay, he's already made a guess. Chris, who in your opinion may well be the big bad of Throne of Thorns? And if you say Beramo, I swear to God.
No, unfortunately, you only just put that in my head now. I am required by Article 73 of the Irish Constitution to long for the blood of a monarch.
So you think that Queen Corinthia of Alberator will be, or just general, that like the Queen Corinthia specifically, or just the kind of the elites of Ambria broadly?
Oh, I'll take them all. Let me bathe in the blood of the elite.
Okay, that's something I can get behind. So I'm not going to argue that position.
I fully agree with Chris. I
you're behind that as
100%
well.
the Queen. Yeah, I don't know if I say all the nobles are just greedy and whatever, but I think the Queen and maybe people close to the Queen or a bloodline thing or something, there's some evilness there that ties in with this whole circle, and I think it's going to come out more and more, definitely.
Okay. Other Sam number. This is why everyone will get very confused when we say Sam number 3. Because Sam is Sam number 3.
But not as confused as if you say Shabadoo. Then people be like,
we haven't been doing that on stream. Yeah.
That's been a while.
Yeah.
I have to say that I agree that it's probably going to be the Queen, but I want it to be the elves. That's what I want it to be.
Yeah.
I don't think it will be, but I would love it if the elves were like somehow the bad guys. Me as a player and me as a character think the elves are quite.
Do you think they are the bad guys, or that they be twisted to become the bad guys? Like
maybe a bit of both. I think like Sam and Askrai think that the elves are not good guys in a lot of ways. I think probably there's something like truly evil going on with the Queen in particular, but I just think the elves are not like, I don't know. There's something about the elves where it's like doesn't seem reasonable, doesn't seem good, and they're a bit too kind of like radical and like hard line in their views in a way that doesn't lend itself to goodness and more lends itself to badness in my opinion.
Well, so far there's not a lot of patriotic sentiment here regarding Ambria. Elindra, are you going to buck that trend? Is your answer on who's the big bads of Symbaroum going to be the enemies of the crown, whoever they are?
No. I think the big bad is going to be Elindra. No.
Okay. Well,
the really
sword after all.
Exactly right. Elindra's sword. The obvious answer that is kind of weird that it's not been mentioned is like the Dark Lords. But I kind of think it's more interesting to think about like how did they come about? How was whatever kind of dark power that fuels them unleashed? So I'm going to go a bit left field and say that for digging too deep into things that they didn't fully understand or have the ability to control, the Ordo Magica were somehow responsible for all of this, or like whatever organization that Ordo Magica has evolved out of.
Mhm.
That's a good one.
That is a good shout, because I would link the Auto Magica to the Queen actually in that assessment.
They are very
I would
close.
have.
Yeah, the
Whereas, like,
crown and
They're the sort
the
of
Orgo are
state
very,
wizards, aren't they?
yeah.
They are,
the
exactly.
Queen and the crown are very close allies.
And they're the ones who do the ritual that turns the Queen into the monstrosity that tries to consume all
Okay,
life.
okay.
Like Symbaroum, that sort of thing.
But if we go with real world metaphors, the Auto Magica are essentially the Manhattan Project, aren't they? Like that's
Sure.
what they are. They're
Sure.
doing weird research to find incredibly powerful weapons. To
Yeah,
use
and
No
they-
one's got to ask whether they should.
They
Yeah.
fund and drive a lot of the expeditions into Davokar for certain.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's
that's
interesting that no one has said either side of the church feud, which I also feel like is a strong possibility that one of those sides is going to be truly bad. Either that
This is
like
not
Prios and Prios's branch is like actually really corrupt and bad, and that is why the Templars have kind of left them, or that the Templars and the part of the church that have left the normal part of the church have been like horribly corrupted, and they're going to be like in some way a really bad part of this story.
I mean, you have seen already that like the Templars have now essentially become a death cult.
Yeah, they're baddies already. And that we know about like the whip of Prios that have like some secretive group somewhere that, or we let someone go back to the whip of Prios who are,
generally speaking, if a faction is making a habit of burning people alive, you can generally put them under the category of baddie, as black and white as that may sound.
I think I'd put them as
A
like
very
medium
prescriptive
bad,
statement,
though.
Matt.
We were asking about big bad, and they feel like a
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
oh, yeah, yeah,
medium
yeah,
bad
yeah,
at
yeah.
most.
No,
I
no,
feel like
no.
they're not going to go to the. I mean,
you think they're
they
in
could
all
have to connect up with big corruption and stuff, but it feels
you
to me
think
like
they're
they're not. And
you
they're
think
gonna...
they're the Saruman of this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, grand. And I guess we already kind of talked about this because we talked about what characters you want to return. I'll just add a little sub question, and then we'll maybe move on to fielding questions from chat. But is there like a faction you desperately want to learn more about? Or is it all going to be the same rough answers as the individuals and the big bads and all this kind of thing? Is there any group that springs out? Who do you think have a bigger part to play than perhaps we've seen so far in the whole thing? I guess, Sam, you mentioned the Templars as a big one. How about you, Chris? Because you seem like you've landed on something.
I'm real interested because I really enjoyed this sudden 180 I felt in my very bones when DeSaba made her closing speech about her plan with the Eastern Duke. I was kind of like, hang on a minute, maybe you're not exactly the kindly old woman I had you pegged for. Maybe there's something a bit more sinister going on here. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out.
Okay. Yeah, that seems fair enough. Sam, viewer's perspective, anything leap out at you?
I think it's all stuff that's just coming, really. But I'm really looking forward to the Father Salvola plotline and sort of the main good part of the church and finding like what's going on with that kid. There's stuff going on there that I feel like is going towards like a Temple of the Many style church with like some interesting barbarian influence and that like mystical stuff, and maybe even some sort of reconciliation with the corruption of Davokar. Not like we're going to take it in, but like an acknowledgement that this is a problem that the church might look at as well. Like rather than locking them all away in a dungeon underneath the city, for example. Like there's a lot of interesting stuff there that I'm really looking forward to exploring, and we really don't know much about Father Salvola and what's going on with him yet. So that lot seems fun stuff.
Sounds good. Stephen?
I got a couple here to skip over stuff that we've already mentioned. So the witches, like the Huldra and that kind of stuff. Like we were kind of aware that they were doing some stuff up on Carbosti, but we weren't really privy to that. But I think their role is kind of the keepers of secrets and the people that know about what's happening in the forest and about history and about how do you kind of hold this like what passes for peace together between the tribes and things,
like a sort of balancing act.
Yeah, and like the tribes have all got this kind of very strong sense of like taboos and like things that you don't do, which I think were kind of born from probably hard won knowledge from things going horribly wrong in the past. So like I feel like they've got a part to play. And then like more recently in the story, what's up with those dwarves, hey? Like,
yeah, it's the first time they've really featured.
Yeah. So because we've talked about humans.
No, I haven't come across this yet.
Okay.
Well, you know what, Sam, you said you needed to step away in a moment.
I do need to go.
Step away now, and we'll do all the talking about dwarves.
I'm like 5 episodes behind.
Yeah.
No.
Thanks for joining, Sam. Good.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Take care, folks.
Catch you later, Sam.
Yeah, Sam.
I feel bad for hastening his departure, but
no.
But, so we've theorized about kind of humans kind of sweeping around the map at various times in history. We've got elves that are kind of, I think, very much not humans, but that have a place and a kind of a connection with Symbar and the spiders as well. And then the dwarves are just this other thing off to the side. And they've kind of lived in the mountains, and they're presented as like essentially mafia, right? Like they behave like a crime syndicate, but they're a different peoples. Like,
yeah, I think
where do they come from? What's their story? What's going on there?
It's definitely notable, and it's maybe not like explicitly written so far, but it probably helps for the others that the others have encountered dwarves who weren't like the mafia.
Right.
In that they met a small enclave of dwarves in Castor who were responsible for looking after the town's bell tower. But like, I think a lantern has been hung on it a little bit. That like, I think I've said like, obviously this wave of dwarves arrived in Indaros and wanted to live there in exchange for like trade rights and stuff like that, and like they have kind of become a significant part of the organized crime of the city. But of course, that's not to say that it's not. That's just what dwarves are like. It's what the dwarves who came to Indaros are like, which may be entirely different from.
Yeah. So exactly. So it's like, what's the history behind that? Another one of the things that I love about the setting is that they've made very specific choices about like what races there are, but also like what races are playable. You can be a human, a changeling, like a goblin, an ogre, and that's it, right? You can't play an elf, you can't play a dwarf. They are reserved for NPC.
Well, that is true, apart from if you have the advanced players guide.
Okay.
Although I still would consider them very specific options.
Yeah.
But yeah, the advanced players guide includes it adds loads of archetype stuff, which we've gone through, and I think some people are aiming for different things in there now. But it does also add the following races: elf.
Oh, okay.
Advanced human. Abducted humans, which is different from changeling. Dwarf. Troll, and undead.
Right. It's hard to see how playable most of those would be in the campaign.
Which is exactly why I didn't offer them as options to any of you.
Yeah.
I think you could make most of them work, but yeah.
It's a stretch, right? Like, but so
It is.
I guess I like the otherness of them. I suppose is kind of the thing when you're just kind of considering like the core rule book, the fact that dwarves are just like not a thing that you can just easily be.
Yeah.
They're designed to have secrets and to have motivations that we don't fully understand, and so that's cool.
No, I think that's definitely the intent. Sam, what about you? Factions you want to see more of, who you think will be major players, who you're interested about in various ways?
I have two. One of them we've kind of talked about already, but the Dark Lords, I feel like are still their own faction. We know from Cylinder's Hope that there's a bunch of them still around, just like doing stuff and plotting, and like they're going to be a big faction. I feel like they're going to be a major bad guy of this story, but like we've already talked about it a bit. But I'm quite interested to see how the like joint barbarian clans are as a faction, where it feels like so far they've been kind of, we've had a bit of interaction with them and like with the chieftain, but they've more been like a kind of subject of things that Ambrians are doing. Whereas I feel like actually there's quite a lot of interesting stuff that could happen between the clans. We know that there's this like kind of, I don't know how to describe them, but this sort of anti-clan clan happening some in Davokar, and how they react to that, and how they react to the chieftain's son getting married to an Ambrian. I feel like there's a lot of stuff there that's going to happen in the kind of politics of the Davokar clans that I think will be interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of pans out.
Yeah. No, I think you're right with that. I think like to talk about this kind of like coalition of northern tribes. Have we, this is one of my weird blank spots where I'm suddenly like, have we found out what they're called yet? Like, I honestly can't remember. I want to say yes, but the fact that none of you can remember it.
Nothing.
I don't think we have.
Okay.
That's not a
may-
solid guide to anything, really. We can't really remember the name of any NPC except Baramo.
I feel like we
I
might have
don't
a name for the person. Like, is there a woman who's responsible
You definitely
for
have
this?
the name of the person who seems to be their figurehead. Yeah. She's called the Blood Daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, that does ring a bell.
Yeah.
But the clan, I'm not sure if we know or not. But
Okay.
like it feels like the kind of barbarian clans as a whole are a key part of this in how they react to that aspect of it, the Blood Daughter and that clan, and also the Ambrians and this new marriage. And I feel like there's got to be some politicking and stuff that goes on amongst the clans that will be a big factor in the future of the campaign.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly accurate assessment. Okay. Let's switch over to chat. We haven't got a huge number of people in chat, but neither have we got no one in chat. Throw out some questions to the campaign. As I said at the beginning of the stream, please keep them spoiler-free. Even if you think the players definitely know or have figured out something, please err on the side of caution, and we'll work through some comments to this point, and then if we get a number of questions or comments to talk about, we'll move on to them. I think this has already sort of been answered, but Color X7, how far have you gotten into the campaign? Yeah, I think you already basically know, but just to sum that up, and also that's an amazing profile picture.
Well done,
Tim the Enchanter. Yeah, we're partway through the Darkest Star. Specifically, without getting into huge amounts of detail, we are rapidly approaching the point. We're rapidly approaching the ending of the Prisoners subplot. As in, they have not yet encountered the prisoner, but will do soon, which may or may not be why I put this episode on pause and did a discussion until John returns next time. Yeah. What else have we got from earlier on? We've got a nice comment from Steve here. It's interesting, for another system like D&D, I'd absolutely guarantee that someone wearing Chekhov's mask would turn out to be an important plot reveal later, but for Symbaroum, I wouldn't necessarily expect blockbuster-style plot twists. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Symbaroum is by and large more complex than that. Than just the obvious bait and switch. But
I'm kind of developing in my soul a little hope that whatever the big bad is, we haven't even seen them yet. Like I'm starting to prepare to give the writers enough credit that's like we can't see everything that's going on, and I really like that. I always liked that from day one of the system, where it kind of some of the mechanics are hidden from the players unless they're actually using them, and all this kind of stuff. I like it. There's so much to like about this system and
Yeah.
this setting and this campaign.
I agree, and I think there's a lot to be said for that kind of. I really try and run campaigns where the players don't have that like top-down knowledge. It's why I always, as Chris alluded to earlier, I'm an old World of Darkness player, and it's always why I love running settings like that for people who've never been in them before, because you don't get them coming along to session and they meet a weird NPC and they're like, oh, well, they're obviously Samishe. And it's like, okay. Like, I like a bit of vagueness. Or even if a player does know about that kind of thing, I would like them to not, especially not act like their character does, but also not maybe hang a lantern on it for everyone or whatever. And I think Symbaroum definitely rewards that kind of play, where there's so much complexity and depth to the world that like the characters shouldn't know a tenth of it, and I enjoy that.
World of Darkness, I always felt like it was a thing that you had to make an effort as a player to be like, I know all these things, but in character, my vampire has never knowingly met a mage or a werewolf, and has no reason to believe that they even exist. Like, that sounds like fairy stories, let alone being able to identify all of the clans or traditions or what, like.
God, just on a complete aside, sitting on the reveal of the in Cincinnati Chronicles, sitting on the reveal via the aura of the person I checked out in the Umbra very early on in the werewolf playthrough, was just like, oh, I know exactly what that is because I read the book 40 years ago.
Yeah, which is great, and that's a great example of like if Chris, look, because I remember that scene, and basically Chris's werewolf was in the Umbra and he saw a character with like a kind of sparkling like aura, like twinkling and sparkling, and he kind of like I loved it, and this is exactly what I like, because as soon as I said that, Chris is an old school werewolf player, like I know he knows what that means, but Chris as a player went ooh and like did a kind of like okay, like I knew he recognized it, and then once that moment of ooh was gone, he shuffled it to the back of his brain and just played it like his character would, which is exactly what you should do, kids. If you like playing like I do, obviously you do what you want.
I guess the point I was circling towards was that for Symbaroum, that stuff's a lot easier because we don't know stuff. Yes, that like I don't know if that was a cultural thing or if that's something in the way that the game was designed, but I felt like I read a bunch of World of Darkness books, and like absorbed a lot of other stuff from people that I was playing with. Symbaroum, I wouldn't dream of picking up these campaign books until after we've played through them. Like, and there's not really any other source material outside of the kind of rule book, so it's very constrained in that way, and I really like that.
It definitely was a particular problem to the World of Darkness, I felt. Well, I think old school D&D was a bit like that as well, where like all the nerds had their big collection of D&D books, and an artifact, the players found an artifact, and one of them would go, oh, I know what this is, and stuff, and
no, you don't, shut up, like
of course I'm saying all this, and I love there's all these layers and things don't mix and blah 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 blah, and then I went and ran something like Cincinnati Chronicles, the last arc of which is all those 5 worlds smashing into each other at high speed, but that's just because sometimes it's fun to break the rules. Not breaking the rules most of the time is what makes breaking the rules a bit of the time fun. Another rule for life to remember. Another comment from Steve here. This was after I said to name your the characters you want back. This is the trick. Don't tell Matt which character you like best, as Matt will visit great harm upon them for drama. Yeah, you just gave me my fridging list. I hope you do realize that. Yeah. Say goodbye to Beramo.
I think we already did, didn't we?
Yeah. Forever. We've got one from Cola X7. Of course, it's the elves, pointy ears, typical earist behavior.
I was going to say that's very pejorative.
What else have we got? We've got a couple here from 42. Good old 42, regular viewer. I'd like to see a troll character. That would be interesting. And like Sam32 said, more characters from the tribes. I agree, and I think including like those clans that we haven't met yet will be interesting. Yeah, because I think we've only encountered 2 trolls, right? And one was like a kind of seemed to be a fairly bestial pet almost, and the other was an extremely unpleasant individual who quite like to intimidate you by eating people alive in front of you. So maybe not the best representation for the trolls as a whole. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see some more there. A note on colonization: are the names of the places new Ambrian names or the native names? I think it depends. I think like sometimes the book doesn't go into this, but I think generally speaking, if a name is like a kind of English name or an English portmanteau name, I have assumed it's the Ambrian name for the place. And if it's not, like Carvosti, I have assumed that is the clan's name for a place. Or even I suspect like Carvosti is not the clan's name for the place. I think it's a clan's name for the place and it's stuck. Like maybe the first clan to have a high chieftain there. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to be just because they all have different languages.
The first clan to have made contact with Ambrians.
Or maybe that, and that's just how that name got known. But like Archbridge, I think is probably the Ambrian name for that place rather than the Odav name. That's how I usually view it. And of course, Indaros is a Ambrian bastardization of Lindaros. Like renaming it specifically after Corinthia's father, who's also he also called Inadar? He has a very similar name to Inadar, if it's not Inadar itself. So it's kind of changed. It's kind of trying to, and this is quite a clever thing for the writers to have done. It's trying to establish kind of prior what's the word? Not authority, but like it's trying to go, oh, this is basically the name this place has always had, which means that we're kind of the people who've always ruled here, if you really think about it, while also twisting it to be a distinctly Ambrian referencing thing that is also linked very closely to the crown.
So it's a manifest destiny angle for the...
Yeah. That is absolutely what it is. And you can see empires in history doing exactly this shit. So yeah. 42. It's been years and nobody really uses magic items of the party, just avoiding them. I think it's more the case that they haven't found too many magic items that really work well for them. But honestly, I think it's just they found a bunch of magic items and they've just been too busy to really figure out what they do or like how they work. I think the only magic item, well, Askarai wears the cloak, but also doesn't really use any of the magic properties of it. He just uses it as a nice bit of armor.
Askarai has not yet bound to that cloak, if my understanding is. Because
I think
this is the thing about the magic items we have in our roster, is that they all have absolutely massive red flags attached to them.
Yeah.
If memory serves. They're all like, you can use this, it's very powerful, but someone else will know you've used it, ...
I think Askarai might have paid an XP to bind to his cloak, but it's a cloak that's good for like controlling people, and you have to roll persuasion to do it. And Askarai's persuasion is like his absolute like it's a 5. It's the lowest a stat can be, and so it's never like in my mind that I'm gonna I'll see if I get like a 1 in 4 chance of controlling this person. I guess I should probably
while you're at it.
Yeah, like I guess I should attempt it at certain points in the story, but I never really think about it. And then the other items we have are like magic items, like the cursed hand, and then the necromancer bell and rod that are clearly horribly bad in multiple ways. And we're like, oh, we'll just keep these and hope we never like get cursed from them if we don't ever use them. Like that's our whole item strategy. It's
Yeah.
dunno.
Well, in
I-
fairness, the one magical item I get reasonably frequent use out of is the good old-fashioned Ring of the Iron Pact.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, a lot of the stuff, inherently magic items in Symbaroum, they all come at a cost because they all give you corruption to use them. So, like, yeah, I think it's just a case of maybe they haven't found something that really works for their character. Yeah, but you know,
I
the
mean,
campaign is yet young.
Elidra uses a magic sword all the time.
Well, is it a
True.
magic sword or is it you using magic on the sword?
According to the rules of the game, in order for her to be able to do what she does, something has happened to that
Yeah,
sword.
yeah, something has happened to the sword. Yeah.
... It's the consequences, Matt. You're so good with consequences that you scare everyone off using the dangly bits.
Good. That's exactly the atmosphere of terror that I want to foster. So there we go. Okay, folks. That was a fun little discussion stream. Symbaroum should be back in 2 more weeks to continue the story. In the meantime, when are our next? Is that in fact the next Telling Tales stream? It might well be, you know. Call of Cthulhu, which is our usual Monday night stream. Oh, I think it's maybe returning this coming Monday, but maybe not. There was a bit of a question mark over the return on the 17th, I think. If other Sam had remained, he might know. Or if John was with us, he might know. But I think the 17th has a bit of a question mark over it. But if not, then it'll be back on the 24th. The next scheduled Yellow King should be on April the 3rd, which is a good few weeks away yet, which is good. Because, as always, it's going to be a monster for me to prep. And there's supposed to be, according to our informal schedule, maybe a one-shot happening on the 22nd of March, which is a Saturday. That's not fully confirmed yet, so don't hold us to that. It's still in the speculative planning stage, so just hold tight on that one. But yeah, Symbaroum should be back in 2 weeks, and hopefully after another couple of months, we'll be swinging back to a weekly schedule. It's basically like this because Yellow King has returned and is soaking up and in order to match my prep time, as it is wont to do. Yeah, there we go. And you know what? One more question for around the table, and not specifically not Symbaroum related one. Here we go. What other series should people, if people have only watched Symbaroum, which is the thing we are known for, I suppose. Known is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. If there's one other series you wish people would watch, what would it be? Let's start with Chris. He's the kind of guy who probably has an idea.
Yeah, go get your eyes wrapped around Cincinnati Chronicles. I thoroughly enjoyed playing my my werewolf there. It was a stroll down memory lane. All of the 4 chapters were great. The final chapter
6.
was 6 chapters. The final chapter was exactly all the reasons why you are warned never to mix the systems. It is glorious. It is a cacophony of chaos. And really nicely put together as well.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, mate. The check's in the mail. Sam, how about you?
I have 2 answers again. Yellow King. I think the Yellow King is really fun. It's a great, like, it kind of makes me wish to a certain extent that we would just be playing like students in 10th of the century Paris with no like it's a great like
Just
historical
having fun in Paris.
Just doing like student things.
Meeting crazy historical figures. And,
like that element of it is great. Like it's really good fun in that way. And then also there's great like horror, cosmic horror, and it's fantastic. Equally, if you wanted something a bit different from the channel, I'd quite recommend Wicked Ones as something that's a bit like sillier and like just kind of easier and good, easy, silly fun.
Which is of course GM'd by other Sam, who was just on the stream. Yeah, grand. How about you, Stephen?
There's a lot to choose from. I think I narrowed it down to like a top 3, and I'm just going to give you all of them.
Do it.
So number 3, I still have fond memories of Into the Odd. I think as a kind of counterpoint to Symbaroum, just a breezy, chaotic adventure.
Hilarious. Yeah, I thought that would be your number 1.
Wow. So number 2, I think Blade Runner was surprisingly great. Like,
I honestly
agree.
was shocked how well that came together. Because I kind of poo-pooed the system a bit when Fria Ligan announced it, being like, I'm not sure it's a world big enough for a TTRPG, but like really enjoyed running that.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of excitement about it before we started, but actually it was great. And my number 1 is not a series; it's a one shot, and it will forever be the greatest thing that we've ever done on the channel, and it's Goblin Quest.
It's tough to argue with Goblin Quest.
It was
if you want
unique.
to know why that instantly makes us go, "Oh my god!" Then go watch Goblin Quest. Not Land of Eam from that's another one.
That is one. Yeah, that was number 4.
Another great one shot that we did, if I do say so myself. But yeah, great. I think that covers all the ones that I was going to say. So but I'd be remiss if I didn't say Yellow King, because it's what I'm running at the moment. So Mercenary. There we go. All right, folks. We'll see you in another couple of weeks for more Yellow King. There may or may not be Call of Cthulhu on Monday, and everything else follows after that, I think. So, take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you all again soon.